welcome to the Digital Alchemist Show. Coming up, we're going to talk about starting a WordPress web design business in 2020. So first of all, we'll talk about the WordPress platform. Then we'll talk about the pitfalls to avoid. And finally, we'll talk about professional WordPress strategy to take your WordPress game to the next level. The WordPress platform. So first of all, why should you choose the WordPress platform? Now, obviously, if you're already into WordPress, you know why you're there. But many people ask me when they don't know why I'm using WordPress. Why should you choose WordPress over Webflow, over just creating websites from scratch or other platforms? Now, the truth of the matter is you don't have to choose WordPress. WordPress is one of the most popular platforms when it comes to websites. I mean, they have a crazy market share. I think it's something like 30%, or I didn't catch up with the latest figures, but this is pretty crazy when you think about all the websites that exist in the world. Now, you don't have to choose WordPress, but obviously there are some good reasons to choose WordPress. So one of the first reasons is that there are so many resources. And when I say resources, I'm talking about tutorials, I'm talking about themes, I'm talking about plugins. So basically, it's possible today to create a website that would have taken like 5 times more time a few years ago. It would have been 5 times the budget, 5 times the time for the scope of the project. Well, I say 5 times, but it could be 10 times, it could be 3 times. You get the idea. It depends on the kind of website, the kind of project that you're working on. So basically, what WordPress allows us to do is to actually be more effective and also be more cost effective. So you can still create great websites, but for a fraction of the cost that it used to cost. And basically, this helped work with really small mom and pop shops that previously they could not pay for professional services. I mean, I'm talking about the really small ones. And nowadays you can get a pretty professional result, but just for a fraction of the cost. So when you choose WordPress, it's not about WordPress versus Webflow, WordPress versus blah, blah, blah. It's not about that. You may choose something else. The reasoning I had was that, okay, I can code, I can create websites from scratch, but why would I reinvent the wheel each and every time I work on a project? Because especially nowadays, you're not going to be able to sell that many websites. I mean, I'm talking about a very small website, 5 pages or so. You're not going to be able to sell those websites if you're going to be 5 times more expensive than the competition and you don't add anything extra. There's no added value. Because if you know a little bit about me and my channel, I truly believe that you can charge more for your services, but you need to add some value. Now, here I'm talking about if you just have the same value that anyone else, you create the same website, but just you're going to be proud because you created it from scratch, it's not going to change anything. I mean, your customers, as we'll see later, it doesn't really matter for them. They want the result. They want the website to look good, to be fun in the search engines. Technically, they want it to be working right. So that's why WordPress is really a cost-effective solution, because you can get started for a fraction of the cost and you can deliver top-notch websites if you follow the good practices, because as we'll see, there are some pitfalls to avoid. So that's one of the main reason I went with WordPress, and that many people go with WordPress. Now, there are some other reasons. Some people think, yeah, it's pretty easy. And it's true. It's way easier to get onto WordPress than to code from scratch. Now, the trouble is that when it becomes too easy, then some people don't really take the time to learn the basics. And I really think you should learn the basics. I've already covered that, but I think it's so important. And when I say basics, I'm talking about HTML, CSS, pretty basic. But that's going to help you become a better WordPress designer, developer, consultant, call it as you want, but it's really going to help you. And like I mentioned in the intro, WordPress also comes with a lot of quality resources. Now, there are plenty of free plugins. There are some great ones, some that, they are developed for like 2-3 months, and then the developers are just out of the scene. Maybe they have stuff to do, and it's not that easy to maintain free plugins. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But when you want to create really solid, even web applications, I've been creating web applications with WordPress, and it took me a few weeks. Whereas if I had been working as people used to work before WordPress, it would have taken months, and the budget would have been different. Now, as I often say, nothing beats a developer. We need developers, and nothing beats a developer. All I'm saying is, for some websites, it doesn't make sense to go from scratch. And that's where WordPress comes in. When you should not choose WordPress, because I just told you that you should use WordPress, but when should you not use WordPress? Well, precisely the example I gave. Sometimes you need something really either more complex or in a niche, and using WordPress might produce the opposite effect. So I'm going to give you an example. I had a lead that was asking me to create a website for his restaurant, because basically, with the crisis and everything, he would like people to be able to order before they get to the restaurant, so they can just pick what they ordered, and they've paid in advance, and they can just take it and leave it, so that there are not too many people in the queue. And as I said, with the current crisis, they don't want too many people in the restaurant. They also want to do food delivery. So I started looking for a WordPress solution, and that meant using WordPress, so with a theme builder, and so on. Then using WooCommerce, for example. Then on top of that, I had to add a few plugins to make WooCommerce work, make sure that it was in compliance with the local laws, and that was too much. For example, the way he has his menu set up, you can get some toppings and you can choose several ingredients. Now, that is a plugin. So I was looking for the perfect solution. I would have ended up with something like 20 to 25 plugins. I know it's a lot, but nowadays many plugin developers, they create 2 or 3 versions of the same plugin. So you have the free version, then you have the pro version, and even if you use the pro version, you need to install the free version first, and then they have some add-ons. So sometimes for one feature, you have 3, 4, 5 plugins. So basically, that was becoming a bit overkill, but for e-commerce, that's becoming the norm, unfortunately, to have that many plugins. Now, you could always develop on your own, but like we just mentioned, it might not really be handy. So with all those plugins, it also means that the client's going to have to pay fees for the premium plugins on a yearly basis. That's part of the business. And I'm upfront about it. I tell the client, this is how much it's going to cost. Now, on top of that, because it's an e-commerce website, they should also have a maintenance plan, because when you have an e-commerce website, you want to make sure that everything is really up to date. I'm not talking about updating right away when when there are new versions of the plugins or the themes, but regularly. Could be once a week, could be once a month. It depends on the type of website and the security that you want to put into that website. So basically, that was another cost. And that cost would actually probably be higher than the cost of the website itself after a year or so. So I told that to my potential client, because it's not a client yet. But I could see that this is not something that he forecasted. He never thought it would cost that much just for a solution where people can order and pay up front. Now, technically, it's an e-commerce, so yeah, it does cost some money. But what I did, I started looking for other solutions, and I found a couple of other solutions where some startups have created some web applications. They do all that. You can create zones. They got the ordering feature built in. They have a very reasonable pricing. So I could have told my client, let's move on with creating an e-commerce website. But first of all, that wouldn't be honest, because I wouldn't do it for myself. So I could not do that. And second, if I did that, it would be a proof that I didn't care about the client, that I wouldn't even look further. So in that case, I think WordPress was not the right solution. And I'm actually sure it's not the right solution. So instead, I told him, listen, I can configure that solution for you, but I still advise you to have like a basic website where you're really going to master what's happening on your website. Because you know those platforms, and the platform I'm talking about, I'm not going to name any names. It's a really great platform for ordering food. I tested it. It's top notch. You can see that they've been going through a lot of iterations to make this work really well. But still, if you want to add a Facebook pixel, you have to pay. You want to add this, you have to pay. You want to add that, you have to pay. And I have no problem with that. That's their business model. And I totally understand, because most of the features are free. So they need to make some money somehow. So I think for some of the features, that potential client is going to pay for those features. But for things like just adding a Facebook pixel code or some Google Analytics code, I mean, that's overkill to pay a monthly fee just to do that. So I told him we can create a basic website, a 5 pages website. At least you're going to master your image, because on the third-party platform, it's nice up to a certain point, because they also sell websites, but their website look really outdated. Whereas the ordering interface that you can load via an iframe is quite nice. So my solution was we create a hybrid platform. We use WordPress just for the front end side, the basic pages, like the homepage, who we are, that kind of things, where how to find us and that kind of things. But we could even use something else than WordPress. I'm just using WordPress because it will be faster with that. But the most important part of the website is going to be on a third-party platform. And that's what I want you to grasp. You're not always going to use WordPress. You really need to find the right use cases, and when it's overkill or when it's not going to be good for your client, you should look for other solutions. Maybe partner with other people working on other platforms. But I think it's really part of the job when you're a freelance creative web professional selling websites for a living. Will it matter to clients that you're using WordPress? That's also something that people ask me a lot. Should they hide WordPress? And I created a video about that. Should you white label WordPress? Honestly, clients don't care. I mean, from my experience, they don't care. What could happen though is if if never heard of WordPress and someone comes and tells them, how much you paid for your website? What? But you know that WordPress is free? Then they could feel like they've been ripped off if they don't know better and if you don't tell them. So the way I do things is different. When before I even sign with a client, I'm going to tell them, okay, I'm using the WordPress platform, and ask them if they know about WordPress. And immediately I try to tell them, okay, WordPress used to be known as a blog platform. It's not a blog platform anymore. I mean, still, of course, you can still blog with WordPress, but it's become a fully fledged content management system. Although some people may argue that it's not a true one, but to me, this is a content management system. To my clients also, because they can manage their content. So I proceed on telling them that we're going to use WordPress because that's what I specialize on if they want to work with me. But I also tell them, okay, WordPress comes as an open source platform. But then I proceed on naming all the famous open source platform, so that in their mind they understand that open source doesn't mean that I'm only using free stuff. I'm explaining that I'm using open source and I'm using WordPress because it's the most used platform for the web, which means that it's a good thing for them. If for some reason they want to stop working with me, they will not be stuck with a proprietary solution that no one has ever heard of. They can work with whoever they want. So that's a commercial good point, actually, because usually they feel relieved to know that, okay, whatever happens, they won't be stuck with something that they cannot deal with. Then I proceed on to tell them about famous WordPress websites, that maybe they didn't know were made with WordPress. But at that point, I can see that they don't really care what I'm going to use. I just want to make sure that in case someone comes and says, oh, WordPress is free, so you're being ripped off, they will know that this is not true. We're using the open source platform, but in a professional way. And I'm going to get to that in a moment. So to cut a long story short, they're not going to care, but you should be upfront, tell them what you're going to use. Actually go further than that, because I tell them I'm going to use WordPress. I'm going to use a WordPress theme, but I'm using it as a bare bones theme. I'm not using pre-made themes. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just not my way of doing things. And because most of the time, for most clients, I'm going to show them how to update their own website. And at the moment, I'm using Elementor Pro. So I'm upfront about it. I'm using Elementor Pro. But I quickly explain to them that this is like the engine, and then I can use the engine the way I want, basically. So I'm starting from a blank page and I can create whatever I want, just like if I was creating something from scratch, but it's going to be 5 times faster and it's going to cost 5 times less. Basically, I keep on saying 5 times, but you get the idea. It depends on the project. So that brings us to our next point. Pitfalls to avoid. So what do I mean by pitfalls to avoid? Well, first of all, you should avoid using a different theme for each project. This is not a universal truth, but I'm sharing my way of doing things. See, previously, what I used to do when I got started into freelancing, for each project, I would look for a different WordPress theme. Usually I would go on a website like Theme Forest. They have beautiful themes. But the thing is, first of all, not all themes are equal. So some themes are really beautiful, but when you go behind the scenes, it's really not good. For example, I'm not a fan of Visual Composer. Maybe you are, so don't be offended, but many of the teams there are using that. Also, it means that for each new project, you need to learn a new theme, because every developer has a different way of organizing things. Some will put the options in a tab within the WordPress backend that says options. Some are going to call it, they're going to put the name of their web design studio and they're going to call it settings. Some others are going to put it in the WordPress customizer. So each and every time you're going to waste some time trying to understand what they were trying to do. And for example, let's say that the theme is beautiful and at one point you see there are some social icons. Now you have to go look, where do you change the social icons? That's another 10, 20, 30 minutes that you're going to waste. And at the end of the project, if you count the hours and the time that you lost, maybe it's a full day, maybe it's a couple of days. You get what I'm trying to say. You're going to waste some time each and every time. So this is something you should really avoid. And we'll talk about that later, but I really want to stress that because I know that many people still do that. And if you do that and you like it, then you totally have the right to do it. I'm just sharing my way of doing things and what helped me streamline the process and avoid wasting time. And as you know, time is money. Next, choosing the wrong plugins. So choosing the wrong plugins, this is really, really important because once again, when I got started, I used to download a lot of plugins, like free plugins. There are some great free plugins in the WordPress community. But what I did not realize is that many of those plugins could be called abandonware. So the developers are all hyped up, they start the project, and then they'll move on to something else. Maybe they stop developing, or maybe, I don't know, they move to a different project. And the trouble with that is that you created a website for a client, you use one of those plugins, and then at one point, either a security breach could happen, or maybe there's going to be incompatibility with another plugin, and then the website doesn't work. And that happened to one of my clients. Basically, they stopped developing, and my client did not notice for like a year or so. And then when he noticed, it was too late because there was no way we could do something with the rest of the plugins. It just didn't work. So we had to remove that plugin, but that plugin was like the main feature on the website. So that was a big mistake, actually. I didn't know about, I didn't know better. I was just starting out. So if I can help you avoid that, that would be my pleasure. But really, like I said, some plugins are great. They're free, but you should always look who's behind the plugin. So most of the time when I install a free plugin, it's a plugin that's developed by a company that has products, which means that they make money. And that free plugin is maybe their way to build their email list or to build their reputation. Just like Elementor, for example. Elementor, they have a free version. The free version is top notch. And then they have a pro version. And because they have a pro version, it means they make money, they can hire some people. So it's not going to turn into abandonware. And when I'm talking about free plugins and free stuff, it's not that I enjoy paying for everything. I would like to have everything free, just like you. But the truth is, when you want something to be supported, you need to pay for it. Just think about it. Do you work for free? Yes, I'm looking at you. Do you work for free? And I'm not talking about charity work that you might do sometimes in the week or once per year. I'm talking about how would you enjoy working for free all the time? It's not going to work, is it? So it's the same thing with developers. And that's why, even though I love all those projects with free stuff, it's great. But when you're a professional, you need to be sure that you can rely on the stuff you're going to install on a kind of website. Now, like I mentioned, even for premium plugins, sometimes it happens that they turn to abandonware, but at least you limit the risk. Being too generic. So that's one of the other pitfalls you should avoid. I touched on that in the previous video, but because it's so easy now to just install WordPress, get a free theme, free layouts, free everything, many people come into the business and they think, okay, I managed to create a website, so I'm going to become a web designer. And that's great. That's one of the best careers in the world, in my opinion. I mean, I love it. But the trouble with that is that many people, because it's so easy, they did not spend the time to understand why is a design looking good? Why is a design looking bad? How can I become better? How can I create my own designs? And what happens is that I see a lot of websites, they look exactly the same. Where I live, I don't know, I think this is like a school training people to create websites. And it's like they're all using the same theme. They're all using Divi. And I think Divi is a great theme and a great builder. I think they do beautiful stuff. I'm using Elementor more now, but for some of the reasons that I will explain later. But I think Divi is great. Now, the trouble with Divi is that if you just install the generic Divi version and you just change the buttons, you just change the logo, and you don't change anything else. I mean, I can spot those websites even before going to the source code. I know just by looking at it. And see, when that happens too many times, it's not that good. And I see many people, they do that. I talked about Divi, but like I said, Divi, they have great layouts. Divi, if you know what you're doing, you can create beautiful websites, just like you can do in Elementor and in other builders. But the thing is, you don't want just to sell a website to a customer, just put their logo up there, and for the rest, you're going to leave everything as is. So I can see the border radius on the buttons. I recognize the open sans font right away. Don't be too generic, because if you do that, your portfolio is not going to be sexy enough. So you're always going to be stuck with a certain type of clients. See, for example, I talked about it before. You should look for a match. You know, it's like dating. You should look for a match. You should look for a client that wants what you have to offer, and vice versa. So you see that some potential customers, they don't care about design initially. So first of all, they just want a website when they don't have a website. But then when they start comparing with the competition, even though they're not designers, they will see that something's off. So if you want to get referrals, if you want to stay in the business, you should differentiate yourself. It could be with SEO, it could be with many different aspects. SEO is crucial. But design also, because you can have the best SEO. If your website looks like it's not legit, people are not going to stay on your website unless it's a really niche website and they can't find the info elsewhere. But just look at your own behavior. Let's say that you're interested to buy, I don't know, a computer or a new camera or something. Most of the people, what they do, they're going to open a lot of tabs. in the internet browser. And when I say a lot of tabs, usually I have like 50 or 60 tabs across various browsers, but people are going to look at and they're going to compare. And even though they're not conscious, they're going to stay with what seems to be the most legit, credible. If your website looks like it was made by a 5-year-old, people are not going to stay on it. And I often talk about that, and I often say that you don't have to be an artist to create a good web design. All you need to do is to observe, reproduce, and then you start creating. So first you need to observe, then master, and then you can start creating. And one of the pitfalls, really, if you want to expand locally and you want to expand your client base, is being too generic, because it's going to work for the first time with clients that don't know better, but at one point they're going to move away. I can't tell you how many people that asked me for a quote like 2-3 years ago, and then they went with a competitor that has really low pricing. And then 2-3 years, sometimes 1 year, sometimes 6 months, they come back and they're like, okay, now we understand. So if you don't want to be that competitor that sends people away, really work on your craft. Don't be too generic. It doesn't mean you have to be an artist, but it means look for fonts, look for great images, great color palette, spend some time. I like to think that when I build a website for a client, I'm trying to build it as if I was building it for myself. So that could help you. Let's move on to our third part. How to take WordPress to a professional level. So there are many ways, but I'm going to share with you the way I do it. So first of all, I would advise you to choose one theme and master it. It doesn't really matter which theme you're going to choose, as long as it's going to work with our next point that you see in a moment. As you know, when WordPress was first discovered as a possible website creation platform, well, there weren't that many themes. You had a few free themes, and then premium themes started happening with websites like Theme Forest and Template Monster, other platforms. So people were just buying themes, and we talked about that earlier on in this episode. But then page builders arrived. So that was Beaver Builder, Divi, and then from page builders we went to theme builders. So if you don't know what the difference is, basically with a page builder you could just edit the regular pages, but that's it, the static pages. And with the theme builder you can edit the header, the footer, blog posts, archives, almost everything. So with the theme builders now, the game is a bit different. So you need to make sure that the theme you're going to choose works well with the theme builder you're going to choose. For example, if you're using Divi, well, obviously Divi is a theme and also a theme builder now. So that's going to work fine. But you can use the Divi theme builder with other themes, like Astra, for example. Now, there are a few themes that I would recommend personally, but you're completely free to choose whatever you want. I would go either with the Astra WordPress theme or Ocean WP. They have those two themes, they have outstanding free versions. So you don't even need to pay for it. And they respect the rule that I talked about earlier on. They have premium products that they get money for. So you have good reasons to believe that they'll still be in business 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, because they're making money with their product. The third theme is the Elo theme, which works well with Elementor. It's really bare bones, so you need to know a little bit about CSS if you want to use that one. But for the first two, they're really plug and play. You don't really need to know anything more than using the interface, although I always advise you to know more. Now, they have great pro versions. And actually, if you want to be serious with web design with WordPress and you want to take it to a professional level, I would really invest in one ecosystem. So what we're really talking about in this point is the tech stack that you're going to use. So you can start free, no problem. Try to make some money out of the free plugins and themes that you're going to use. And once you make some money back, invest in your business. So choosing a tech stack is really the smart thing to do. So for example, if I take my own example, I like to use Astra. Why? Because it's really lightweight. and it plays well with the other tools in my tech stack. So basically, I'm not saying it's the best theme in the world, although I believe it's one of the best, but what I'm saying is it works really well. They have a solid team behind it, and there are a few features that I really enjoy. And I've talked about that in a long video. I'm not going to explain too much about it now. All I'm saying is some of those features I need, and they can take my website creation craft to another level. I also like it because it comes with really handy features. So basically, when I can start a project with Astra and I take it to the strict minimum, and you would not be able to recognize this from Astra looking at one project from the other, unless I use some of the same elements that I created myself. But for the rest, unless of course, just like Divi, if you use the default Astra theme, of course people are going to recognize it. But if you just follow what I told you earlier on, is that you're just going to use Astra, and then you're going to really customize it. You're going to change the fonts, you're going to change the colors. You're really going to take some time to build a great website for a client. And what I like about it is that you can really deactivate what you don't need. So all the extra fluff, you can just deactivate it. And if you wish, in the pro version, you can even white label it, which I don't do, although I have the pro version. But if this is important for you, you can do it. Next, you should choose one theme builder and master it. So that sounds like an echo to the last point, which was choose one theme. Well, once you know your theme in and out, for each project, you're not going to waste some time. And it's exactly the same thing for the theme builder. Now, I know that there are some wars. People say, yeah, they prefer Thrive Architect. Some people prefer Divi. Some people prefer Elementor, Beaver Builder, you name it. Even some people, they like Visual Composer, which is now called WP Bakery. And people get really emotional about it, which is not the case for me. If I like something, I like it, but it doesn't prevent me from looking at what the competition is doing, because what I want is efficiency. I used to work a lot with Divi, and I still think it's great. But at one point, they were really slow to get the theme builder up and running. And I knew I needed that. And at that point, I could see it was coming earlier. It would be coming earlier with Elementor. So I tried Elementor with my workflow on one project, and my instinct told me, okay, this is going to work for now. And I think I was right, because it took Divi like a couple of years to come up with the theme builder. So even though I love Divi, I mean, there was no way I could wait 2 years. Now, the great thing is that for us consumers, the fact that those companies, they really have that competition, it means that for us, it brings better products. And honestly, I believe that there is room for enough of these theme builders, because I don't think any of them is the perfect one. I think some of them are going to match with your workflow or my workflow. So it's really a matter of trying as many as you can on real projects if possible, because that's the way you learn. But it's not always possible to buy all the licenses. So for example, with Elementor, you can try the free version, and if you like it, then you feel confident you can buy the pro version. With Divi, you don't have a free version, but on the other hand, they have a demo where you can really test the product for free. And then they have a really aggressive pricing also. You can get the lifetime deal for really cheap. I tried Thrive Architect. I think there are some really great features, but at that time, it was not good for my workflow. So what I would advise you to do is to get out of the emotional discussions. Stay off that. Just try something and see how it works with your workflow. For example, one thing I like with either Divi or Elementor is that they have a lot of third-party add-ons. Also, I like the add-ons pack that are released by some other big or main companies, and I really enjoy that. And it would have been harder if Divi had come up with the theme builder earlier on in the game, because I was already invested with Divi a lot. But what I'm trying to tell you is that keep your mind open. What you want is that your clients are happy and that you can actually finish your projects in the best possible way, the most effective way. And so you need to detach yourself for the emotional side of, oh, I prefer this or I prefer that. Of course, you can have your preferences and you're going to work with your preferences. But I would not advise you to just think, okay, I love that brand. I'm going to stay with that brand no matter what. You can do it. But then if I had done that, because as I said, I have no problem with Divi. I think it's a great platform, but I should have had to wait a couple of years to enhance the production value of my websites. So that was no option. And last but not least, choose quality resources. So if you want to take your WordPress game to the next level, and we've talked about that earlier on, there are some great free stuff. I talked about the Elementor free version. I could talk about images. You have websites like Unsplash, Pixabay, Pexels, or you have great resources. The trouble with those resources is that because they're free, everyone is using it. And I can tell you how many times I land on the website and I see the same picture of the same guy that I've seen like 10 times on the same day. So just imagine if in your portfolio you have those type of images, and then you come against the portfolio of someone that has really either pictures made by a professional photographer or maybe stock images, but that they really took the time to select. You're going to look generic at one point, and the competitor is going to look like they own the game. And here I was just talking about pictures, but I could say the same for videos, for illustrations, for the fonts. I mean, I love my Google fonts, but sometimes, I try to put a premium font in the mix just to stand out. Now, in terms of resources, I think the best investment you can make is get yourself a Envato Elements membership. I mean, they have millions of assets. Photos, videos. They even have WordPress themes, even though, like I said, I do not advise to use a different theme for each project, but sometimes just for inspiration, it works great. They have WordPress plugins, so that's great. It can really reduce the cost of your project. They have music, they have 3D objects, they have illustrations, premium fonts. I mean, that's crazy, crazy, crazy value. This is like the Netflix of web designers.
Crazy value.
For the rest, I think you should also invest in an add-on pack. For example, for Elementor, you have a few add-on packs. I cannot tell you which one is the best one because, I mean, so many of those add-ons are great. I know that for Divi also, there are some great add-ons. So once again, it's a matter of if they have a freemium model, try some of the add-ons, see whether you like it. It's impossible to buy all of them because it's like a new one popping every day. But there are a few that I could recommend, especially for the Elementor ecosystem. So if you're into Elementor, some of the add-ons I could recommend are CrocoBlock. CrocoBlock is a membership, and it comes packed with so many add-ons. It's overwhelming. I'm trying to keep up with all the stuff they release. I mean, this is crazy, especially the Jet engine. If you know anything about dynamic websites, this is crazy. And by the way, if you want to build dynamic website and kind of web applications, you should go and check the WP Tuts WordPress channel from Paul C, because I mean, this guy is a machine when it comes to content, and he came up with a lot of free courses and tutorials on his channel. This is just crazy, crazy value. So you should really go and have a look. Some of the other add-ons pack are ultimate add-ons for Elementor, and this is actually part of a package from the company behind the Astra WordPress theme that I mentioned earlier. So you can get the Astra WordPress theme, and depending on the package you have, you get ultimate add-ons for Elementor, WP Schema, WP Portfolio, a great ecosystem of plugins. They have lifetime deals. I'll put some links, of course, in the description, but what I'm trying to say is that you can start free, but then if you want to invest in quality add-ons, these are the ones that I can really recommend. Also, Elementor Extras is great. And on top of my head, essential add-ons for Elementor, happy add-ons. There are way too many and they're all great. But what I do, I try to avoid installing all of them in one project. So basically, when I start a project, I will look at, okay, what's the most appropriate add-on pack for this project? So if I need 2 or 3 of the widgets that they have, I'm trying to use only one add-on pack. Otherwise, your website is going to be bloated. Also, something I would really advise is that you should look for add-on packs where you can deactivate each feature individually. So you don't load like 100 widgets. You just load what you need. So yeah, whatever you choose, whether it's add-ons, pictures, spend some time on it. Even stock images. Even if you get the Envato elements, okay, you're going to get premium pictures, but let's say that you want to build a website for a pizza restaurant. If you just type pizza and take the first picture that you find, guess what? You're going to have the same problem then with the free images. everybody took that first picture because that's the lazy way of doing things. You just pick the first one. Look for the picture that you would want to have on your own website. And thinking like that really helped me to create better websites, because I always think, okay, let's imagine that it's my restaurant. I don't want to look like the competition. And this is the message I want to convey. So I need to find the image. Now, I used to spend way too much time. Sometimes I spend 2-3 hours looking for the perfect pictures for the whole website. Now I do things differently depending on the scope of the project and how much I'm paid for the project. I'm going to set a definite time where I look for those images. But whatever I do, even if the time is up, if I didn't find the right picture, I'm going to look for it and I'm going to find it, because I want to make that difference. And I know you want to, because if you're watching this, it means that you want to up your game. You want to make a living selling websites, and you've decided to do it with WordPress. So whether you do it with WordPress or another platform, what's going to make the difference is the time you spend refining your craft. Because just using a generic website, like I said, it's going to work for one-off projects, but you're going to look way too generic at one point. So I hope that you learn a thing or two about starting a web design business with WordPress. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, like it. It really means a lot for me. And if you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, would really appreciate if you could subscribe if you want to get more tips and more of this type of shows. And also I release tutorials and really focus on WordPress. So thank you for bearing with me. Thank you for watching this video. I hope to see you in the next one. And in the meantime, don't forget to invest in your success.